Friday the 6th of September today, till midnight-ish. At a very nice evening, nice temperature-wise. It is breezy, there is a northeasterly breeze, but it's not bringing a chilly northeasterly breeze. We have some really good temperatures coming over, some very humid air coming over from Eastern Europe and beyond, I believe. Potential for some interesting moths to occur in the UK, and certainly there's signs of migration, but it's in the form of butterflies. I've heard of large numbers of red admirals coming inland off the sea somewhere down south in the UK, but also good numbers of red admirals going down the coast. I think it was the Danish coast. So you never know what's going to turn up, but chances are it's just going to be ordinary fare. But I really need to make use while the temperatures are like they are, nice and very pleasant. So I think it's going to drop cooler as we go into next week. So skies are darkening, time to get set up. Well, we're off and running here at Eakin on the 6th of September. Lovely conditions here. It's very humid, very humid, and it'll be interesting to see what we get tonight. I'm not expecting a lot, but that looks as though that's the first green carpet that's flying around my net and bag. I'm not properly set up yet, but it's a very nice situation here. Let's hope for something out of the ordinary. Well, it's been a really good opening sort of 40 minutes to this session, and I didn't think it would be. It's quite taken us by surprise, and I've been very busy writing down and checking what's come in and what's still about, and good numbers of species too. And we're only, say, about 40 minutes into this session, but the best moth for me so far is a micro moth, one that's not particularly rare or uncommon, but it's one that doesn't turn up very often, and it's Hypatima rhomboidella. It's a moth with quite a beautiful name that rolls off the tongue, and occasionally we used to find it, Dennis and I, on the trunks of trees, but most often it occurred in the Sherwood Forest area at light. So that's a nice one to get. It's not a moth that I see every year. Eclaris imargana is another nice species, and a easily identifiable Eclaris because the wings at rest are nicely incurved. It's a quite unusual shape, so one that you can easily pick up and learn. For the rest, Apotamus betulatana, which is common enough, brown house moth. And then of the macros, we've got species like common wainscot, green carpet, nutmeg, dusky thorn already in, and canary shouldered thorn also in as well, but along with the ubiquitous square spot rustic, a number of those in. Brimstones, only 3 in at the moment. I wonder if we'll get anywhere near the 63 that I got at Besthorpe gravel pits the other night. That was quite astounding. And also of note is 2 brindled greens that are in. Brindle green is one of those really nice autumn moths, and obviously I like it because it's green. But then we've got turnip moth spinning snout, 1 large yellow wandering so far, centre barred sallow, of course. There'll be a number of those, and light emeralds. So a really good selection of moths, and we're on to about 20 species already, and we're just coming up to about 9 o'clock now. The catch cup has 1 occupant so far. I expect more than just this solitary hornet. I have come prepared with 3 catch cups just in case. It's the only trouble when you're trapping in or close to woodland on an autumn. It's hornet time. Never had a problem with wasps, only ever had the odd one at light, but hornets are more nocturnally active apparently. But this one settled down, and at the end of the session will be released unharmed. So a really good start to this session. Very pleasant conditions indeed, and there isn't the slightest breath of wind. That's why if it is breezy, if you can, you're always far better off looking for somewhere sheltered, or at least sighting the trap where it's sheltered out of the breeze. But sometimes it can't always be like that. Don't always have the opportunity or the positioning to be able to tuck the trap out of the way, but it's always proved 9 times out of 10 at least to be worthwhile doing and trapping up this side of Lound wood. Moths tend to come out of the wood and fly along sides here. I think we might have a light emerald just coming in there on the left hand side. There are plenty of moths coming in, plenty of moths flying about, so these are ideal conditions and I need to make the most of them. Well, here's a surprise, and certainly a species that I didn't expect, because this seems very, very late. I don't think I've ever had black arches as late as the 6th of September. In fact, I don't think I've had it probably past the last week of August. I'll have to sort of check up when I get home, but this is a big, big surprise, but provides us a great opportunity to look at those fabulous antennae that the male has. This is obviously fairly worn, but it is getting on a bit in terms of black arches now, and it would have been out for several weeks. But I'm very surprised at this, but very welcome. This is a nice addition to tonight's list. And here's one of the brindle greens that are in. This one's preparing for takeoff because it's been disturbed so many times while I've tried to film this. Beautiful moth, one of a range of colourful moths. And the green on these, it might not appear brilliantly green on the camera, but it's a beautiful, almost dark sage green. A lovely moth of autumn. Occasionally you can find this at rest on the trunks of trees. We've found several, Dennis and myself, over the years. So that's brindle green, and a number of those are in at the light. You may well be able to hear the breeze blowing through the top of the trees here at Loundwood, but not a breath of wind here, right at the edge. Lots of moths on the sheet, and a steady procession of moths are coming into the light. We're on to about 16 centre-barred sallows already, which is very nice, and the number of brimstones is approaching double figures. It's nice to see a decent number of moths continue to come down and appear on the sheet over the last couple of sessions. Another brimstone just comes flying by and is thinking about coming into the light. Quite often brimstones don't come into the light, they just land on nearby vegetation, but a lot of moths do that. Nothing unusual in yet, but just good numbers of moths. I'm just having a wander away from the light. I'm only about 10-20 yards away from it, but I like to show these wider views. It captures the scene and gives the viewer some kind of idea or concept of the situation where I am. There's more to moth trapping than just catching moths as far as I'm concerned. It's the experience of being out. It's pretty much the angler thing. I think, or the angler angle, you could say. It's nice to be catching moths or fish or whatever, and that's indeed the reason why you come out and catch moths or catch fish. But you also go out with an appreciation of your wider environment. I don't think people often get that. It's not just like with moths, it's not just about catching rarities. It's the whole experience. It is for me, and I like to show these wider shots because it gives people that aren't into moth trapping or maybe thinking about moth trapping, it gives them an idea of what the hobby is like. Very different, of course, if you trap from home. But it would be just easy for me to just continually show this moth and that moth and waffle on about it, but I like to try and throw these little scenes in to break that up and help give the impression of what fabulous places you can visit, some great nature reserves, or in this case arable farmland, just a small wood was set completely within arable farmland. Yet you'll still catch moths wherever you trap. I have a moth in a pot. A bloody big moth in a bloody big pot. This has just come in, almost hit us, just landed on top of me. And this is the Clifden Nonpareil, the often called blue underwing. What a monster. I have seen these before, and I've had one fly over my head, never came into the light in the garden. This beauty literally dropped out of the sky. It's obviously new for ecrin, my second ever. What a moth. What a huge moth. I can't show you too much of it, although I'll try and show you an in the pot shot. It's a fabulous thing. I have to be careful with this. Just look at that. Immaculately fresh. It really is. I've reared these a couple of years ago. To get one here at Ecrin is astounding. And to think that a few years ago this moth was still pretty much the holy grail of moths in the UK. It's a species everyone wanted to catch. And then we started getting more and more of them on the south coast. They got a foothold in the New Forest and in other places too. And then 3 or 4 years ago, records started appearing inland. Nottinghamshire got records, got more records each year pretty much, in the last few years. And here we are, Clifden Nonpareil at Ecrin. What a moth. Well, that was some event, and it's not sunk in yet. Not sunk in at all. The trouble is, when you get what is still a very rare moth, although it is increasing, but moths such as Clifden Nonpareil and red underwings aren't that common at light. Red underwings especially. I've never had many at light, and they've usually been very, very brief visitors to the light before going up and off again. That was enormous. That was bigger than any red underwing. It's probably gone now. It was still flying, fluttering around in the grass around here, but hopefully it is up and gone. I hadn't got a container or cage to warrant putting it in, and to be honest, I didn't want to. I've got plenty of really good photos, but what a moth! I can't quite believe it. Sort of the hoped for thing that this is why you trap, this is why you sit out or you run the trap night after night for that. Well, everyone likes a rarity. We don't set out to get rarities, but when one comes along, it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and it does wonders for the enthusiasm, I can tell you that. I'll be sitting here for the rest of the night now, not believing what has come in and what I've written down in the book. It's the 29th species. Well, could be 30. I've got a couple that are potted up, but it was just a total surprise. Clifden Nonpareil lays its eggs on the trunks of poplars, and the larvae feed subsequently on those poplars. The larvae are really large. It's not blessed with poplars here, so presumably a wandering individual. There are some poplars over towards Neaton, which is a good mile away, and over towards Bilthorpe. But what an enormous moth, what a fabulous moth, really is. Can't believe it. I'm chuffed. Absolutely chuffed at that. It's going to take a hell of a good moth to top that one this evening. Yes, I am glad that I came out. Back to counting square spot rustics now. I'm standing up for this, largely due to cramp, and so having a little stretch of the legs. But while I was mucking about with that Clifden Nonpareil, I suddenly noticed something else on the sheet, and because there are leaves in this container is an indication that it's not Lepidopterus. It's a beetle. It's a beetle that I've been after for a couple of years since I last saw it, and it's Metoicus paradoxus, which is a really unusual beetle, and in fact it's quite unbeetle-like, and the larvae develop in the nests of wasps. It's quite widespread apparently according to the websites, but it's not common in Nottinghamshire, and this is only the second time I've seen it. The first time I was stood gawping at it and even filming it before I realised exactly what it was. It looked quite unusual, it looked familiar, and then as it was about to take flight, I suddenly realised how familiar it was. By that time it had gone. All I was left was just a bit of video footage. Didn't have the opportunity to photograph it. Tomorrow morning I will have that photograph, but it is a very unusual beetle, and so hot on the heels of Clifden Nonpareil is this Metoicus paradoxus. It's not all about moths, this moth trapping malarkey. I know the sheet looks a mess with vegetation growing up from underneath it, but plenty of moths on the sheet. Highest numbers of the species that are in, well, centre barred sallow is top of the lot, square spot rustic, as you might imagine. We're on about 10 brimstones at the moment. Something else just come in there, but another light emerald. But at the moment it's centre-barred sallow. That's heading the list of species. The number of moths coming in has dropped considerably. I don't know what time it is. I haven't got a clue as to the time. It's probably later than I imagine it to be, but I've no immediate plans to up and leave. Now here's a moth that's just come in, and this is one of those moths again that I never catch very many of. At best it's annual and a single record at that, but this is a wax moth. Now anyone new to moth trapping, catching this moth for the first time, will immediately be reaching for the larger moths book, but you won't find it because it is actually a micro, and it is in length, as you look at it now, from head to the back of the wings, it is an inch long, 25mm easy. It's quite a good sized moth. One of the confusing things about moth trapping is the fact that some micros can be considerably larger than some of the macro moths. But wax moth here, Galleria melanella, if I remember right. So it's not a moth that you'll catch a lot of, just occasionally, but a nice one. It's nicely marked and it's quite an unusual shape. There's not really any other moths like this. So that's wax moth that's just come in. Just gone past midnight. I've no idea really how long I'm going to stop till. I'm certainly going to give it to a 20 past midnight. That will make a nice round 4 hours, but you never know. All of a sudden, as has already happened twice, and the second time I'll tell you about in a minute, a moth comes in that makes you want to stay. We had Clifden Nonpareil, of course, which is obviously going to be the moth of the night, but I have just had white point in, so that makes 693 species now for the equine area with white point. And so I'm tempted to stay a little bit longer, especially in view of the weather forecast for the next couple of days and nights. Good temperatures and nice and very mild temperatures, but a little bit on the wet side by the sounds of it. So I think it's a case of probably making the most of the weather that I have here. But we'll see what turns up. You never know in this game. Nothing could turn up, or something ridiculous could turn up. Well, nothing has come in really at all in the last sort of 10-15 minutes or so, and I don't think anything is now. I've just taken a few bits up to the car and it is blowing really strongly, and it feels considerably cooler than the 17 degrees centigrade it is and has been for most of this trapping session here. So I think it's time to call it a night, and we'll release the hornets in a minute and get the generator switched off and start and pack up. So that's that. Another night's trapping, and what a night it's been too.